Do you believe in an unseen world? Have you ever seen or experienced something inexplicable? Do you ever sense subtle energies? This is Soul Mechanics, practical tune-ups to be a healthy human, and I'm your host, Kate Foley. Do you have any experiences with energy fields? Sure you do. We all do. We walk through them all the time. Our doctors order them, and we go to other doctors who use energy fields to look inside us. What are some examples of energy fields, or things or instruments that emit an energy field? Echocardiograms, ultrasounds, MRIs, electrical wires, heat, microwaves, a nerve impulse, your cell phone, your television, light bulb, sunlight. So why is it so bizarre for people to talk about and understand bioenergy fields? Is it that far-fetched that we emit energy? No, it's completely normal. Do you honestly think that just because you can't see something or touch something, that it's not there? Also, just because you can't perceive something, does that mean that someone else can't perceive it? We've heard story after story about people's varying perceptions, like people who see orbs or flashing lights or little green people or UFOs or psychic information or even, yes, energy fields. How many times have you walked into a room and it's been obvious to you that there was an argument? You don't even need to observe body language to know something happened. You just experienced and perceived an energy field. It's perception. Each of us perceives the world in a unique way, and our perceptions give us a certain amount of information. Energy fields give us information about one another, and every single one of us can perceive some information from another person's energy field. I've heard some people say, I just don't believe in that crap. You know what? You don't have to believe in it, as if beliefs matter when it comes to physical science. I want to say, do you believe in your heartbeat? Do you believe in brainwaves? Do you believe in your peripheral nervous system? These are all animations of our physical bodies, but you don't think they emit some sort of field? So you don't believe in life? Electrons have energy fields, and electrons compose energy fields. Pay attention in any chemistry class and you'll discover this. Can we see electrons? Not with the naked eye. So does that mean that they don't exist? What about atoms? Do they exist? Years ago, there was a bit of mainstream doubt regarding the effectiveness of craniosacral therapy until it gained acceptance. If you don't know what the craniosacral rhythm is, it's the pumping action of the ventricles in the brain, moving cerebrospinal fluid out of the cranium through the meninges down the spinal column. This rhythm can be felt anywhere in the body. At first, for someone who palpates for a living, the craniosacral rhythm seemed, to me, like someone's imagination. I doubted that it existed until I was taught how to sense the craniosacral rhythm, which is incredibly subtle. Now, it seems obvious to me. This experience leads me to wonder, how many other rhythms exist that I can't perceive yet? Many people can see auras around other people, animals, trees, even buildings and rocks. What do I mean by an aura? Most people would describe an aura as a colorful halo or a series of halos around an object or a person. I see auras periodically when my level of consciousness changes. Typically, if I can relax my mind and my eyes and stand or sit with a person in a present state of mind, just sort of allowing things to come and go, I will see auras. I see auras a lot when I'm intently listening to someone talk about their life and concerns. But it's not usually something that one can just call upon. It's a world of subtlety. A more skeptical person entertaining the idea of subtle energies might want hard evidence. Convince me, I've heard time and time again. I used to want to convince a skeptic that I can see auras around people, or I hear soft voices of guidance when people are talking, or that I see animals as symbolic guidance on or around people. I used to want to prove it to a skeptic. But over time, I've realized the world of subtlety is the complement to the world of hard evidence. It's a world of faith and imagination. It's a world of mystery and symbolism. One doesn't go out and nail down the subconscious mind, but the subconscious mind has more power over our perceptions and actions than we would like to believe or admit. That's probably why so many people find it difficult to understand the subconscious mind, because they can't control it. Last August, I contracted COVID for the first time. After recovering from the acute stage of the illness, I was preparing to go out for a run with my niece. We were stretching in the driveway, and I began to see a pulsating, jagged line above her head while I was talking to her. It was disturbing. I began to feel nauseous, and my hands started sweating. There was a very slight feeling of euphoria. In my conscious, rational mind, I started sorting out the possibilities. I thought, okay, am I seeing her aura? Then I shifted my focus to a nearby boxwood shrub, and I saw that jagged line above the shrub. Then I realized, no, this is not her aura. This is something in my visual field. I wondered if I could be having a stroke. I didn't want to alarm my niece, so I jokingly told her, listen, if I fall over and become unresponsive, run back to the house and get my brother. My brother is her father, who's a physician. She laughed and agreed. All I could really do was observe it, anyway. It grew in intensity for several minutes until finally, after 20 minutes, it faded into the periphery and I no longer had the pulsating line. The nausea subsided as well as the euphoria. I'm condensing this story for the sake of brevity. The experience was much more intense and alarming. This was probably a blood vessel in my brain or in my eye that was inflamed, and that was not subtle. I was speaking to a family member about it. She's a nurse and was very concerned and loving and helpful regarding the origin of the issue and what I should do about it. She has a very rational, scientific mind and knows about my inclination towards the subtle world. She asked very specific questions, trying to delineate this acute episode from my ability to see auras. I told her there were a couple of differences here. One was that this was a hard pulsating line that didn't vary when my eyes moved away from my niece. So it was in my visual field no matter where I cast my eyes. Another difference was that I felt nauseous and unsettled. When I see auras around people, I feel relaxed and peaceful. There are many other differences between tuning into someone or something's energy field and having a personal health issue. However, with all this said, we can sense our own subtle energy fields. And who's to say that I wasn't seeing the energy field of a blood vessel in my eye? I was obviously receiving some sort of alarm from my body. Pain, nausea, numbness, anxiety, these are all signals from our bodies asking us to pay attention. I can say the words energy field, and that describes information coming into my awareness in regards to anything I'm perceiving. So let's come back to the vasculature of my eye and or my brain. I was receiving information, alerting me to an issue. It's the same thing with perceiving someone else's energy field. Our energy fields represent the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of our lives. Sometimes we can separate this information, but often the information comes as a package. So if you think that a physical issue you're having is strictly physical, I suggest you explore this further. Nothing, in my experience, is strictly physical. I don't typically speak in absolutes, but the longer I live and the more I work with people, the more I realize that physical issues are never just physical. There's always an emotional, mental, and spiritual component. There is always a metaphor applied to every injury, accident, or illness. And listen, applying metaphors to your life isn't about truth or correctness or explaining anything away. Metaphors are applied to our circumstances for meaning and understanding. The subtle world cannot be found with a rigid or fearful mind. I don't believe it can be found. You basically walk into a dark vacuum, speak words of invitation, and wait. You allow a reply, but you don't always receive a reply, especially if you have an expectation. You always have to allow for a non-answer. There's no expectation and no urgency. Tuning into the subtle world requires a shift of consciousness. In my personal experience, if I have something acute going on internally, I can't focus on someone else and perceive anything. I'm focused on myself. And anyone else exploring this world of subtlety needs to understand this. It is imperative to be grounded when you're focusing on someone else. What does it mean to be grounded? It means feeling safe and stable wherever you are. Your thoughts are not racing, and you have the ability to shift emotionally without attachment. You can be compassionate and detached. People throw the word grounded around a lot. I hear people say things like, "It's not hard to be grounded. Just imagine roots growing out of your feet and into the earth." But I'm finding that more and more people don't know how groundedness feels. They've never had that experience. So, without previous experience, grounding yourself can seem very frustrating and damn near impossible. In today's world, where most of our communication is digital and our attention is pulled in 1,000 different directions at any given minute, groundedness isn't familiar territory. But it is growing in importance, especially for our mental and emotional health. In today's world, I think grounding begins by moving out of the mental plane. You can move out of the mental plane by meditating. But when I say meditating, I mean practicing stillness through breath and observing your thoughts, not indulging them. You can also move out of the mental plane by feeling. Place your awareness in your chest, or if that's too abstract, get a stethoscope and listen to your heartbeat, or place your hand on your chest and feel your heartbeat with your hand. Once you gain that connection, then move your awareness into your chest and feel your heartbeat in your chest. Guess what? You probably aren't thinking right now. And if you are, go back to exploring your heart with simple curiosity. When I step up to my table and lay my hands on someone, I use this exercise frequently to begin. But my goal is to sense and observe people's energy fields. What do I mean by this? I mean, I'm sensing any rhythm that presents itself to me. It could be their respiratory rhythm, or it could be their heart rate. But these rhythms pull my awareness into more subtle rhythms. I begin to see subtle energy fields when I let go of expectations or my desires to have control over the session. I see whatever presents itself. Sometimes I see an image of an animal. Sometimes I hear a voice that tells me to place my hands on their head or their heart or wherever. Sometimes I see a sentence in the air, or I see a series of images that seem more like a movie strip. Other times I just get a knowing of information, perhaps about something emotional happening in their lives, or about a health condition, or about something in the future. But none of this happens because I'm forcing it. It's truly an allowance. I'm open to anything. And believe me, sometimes I see or hear something that makes absolutely no sense and feels rather embarrassing to me when I tell the person lying on the table what I saw. I've been blown away when I'm validated. But so much of this work is setting my ego, my doubts, my rationality, and my expectations on the back burner. I cannot be concerned with my correctness. Who cares if I'm correct? It isn't about me. And if I make it about me, my expectations, my need to be the healer, or my need to help my client, the session is lost. And let me tell you, setting all of my issues aside is hard. It takes practice and diligence. But in today's world, it's more necessary than ever to be a present and active listener, whether you're a practitioner or not. aware of your thoughts and your baggage is imperative. When you see this, set it aside. It's not unlike meditation. That's why meditation is so helpful when you begin to do this work. You're helping someone else. Again, this isn't about being a healer or being a practitioner. This is just about listening. When someone is in a tough spot, they can't always hear or see or feel what is right for them. They might have lost their path. The idea behind reading the subtle energies is to help someone step back onto their path. It's a dialogue. It isn't about being the almighty sage and telling someone about themselves. Is what I see resonating with them? Does it feel right to them? If not, it's either not the right information or it's not the right time. If that's the case, I, the practitioner, have to let it go. Sometimes being wrong about something is the fastest way to finding what's right. And again, it's not about me. It's not about being right or wrong. What's most important is, do they feel understood? Do they feel heard? By the way, anyone listening to this who isn't interested in being a healer can take all of these practices and apply them to your experiences as a client or in your personal relationships. You need to be aware that healers have a responsibility to their community as active listeners and to practice presence and groundedness. But you, as a client, also have a responsibility to show up, undistracted, and ready to heal. A healer isn't focusing heavily on healing someone. They aren't trying to do anything. They're stepping out of the way and allowing healing to take place. They don't have to concentrate on it. They don't have to repeat it over and over again in their mind. It's as simple as something like, I'm going to tie my shoes. When they do this, it's a reflex, an intention. They aren't heavily focused and thinking about tying their shoes. That's ridiculous. It's the same thing with a healing session. The healer asks the person who's getting on the table what their intentions are, or what's going on in their lives. The client has to be involved. They need to demonstrate a willingness or an openness to receive. The client can tell the healer briefly or in detail what's going on, but it's way more helpful if they're vulnerable and have a desire for an interaction with the healer. If you are a client and you don't feel safe being vulnerable with the healer, you need to trust this. Don't remain with a practitioner you don't trust because they have 1,000 great reviews. Once the healer has a person on the table, ideally, both individuals relax into a receptive state. They're relaxing into a state of allowance. What are they allowing? For me, I'm allowing all that I know of God and the universe. I allow everything. I'm not interested in setting limits on anything. I have boundaries. So if I am interested in setting limits, I'm getting in the way. We tend to have so many fears of the unknown. So many people are afraid of what's in the dark, or they don't know how to deal with something unfamiliar. So many people want certainty and control over their lives and their futures, and the session. So when you exert certainty and control, you're limiting your possibilities. You're limiting your healing. The intention to heal is there. That's why this entire interaction is happening. Why would a client make an appointment with a healer if they didn't want something healed, right? Also, if a client is worried about demons or attachments or some other dark, shadowy figure coming and taking over, they should ask themselves and the healer about boundaries. If you have adequate boundaries outside the session, you'll have adequate boundaries in the session. But ultimately, both client and healer need to let go of control. They need to surrender their grip on this physical reality and allow for something else to occur. Allow for the intention to take place. Allow for miracles. We have oppositional forces constantly driving us. We have the survival part of our brains that is always judging and assessing and controlling. Then we have the more evolved part of our brain that is seeking understanding, compassion, and wisdom. We have our conscious selves and our subconscious selves, working in tandem but often opposing one another. So, letting go of control and certainty also feels like you're giving up or being apathetic, but it isn't. When you're letting go of control and certainty, you're specifically placing trust in the larger forces, whatever you call them. I call it God. That's the difference between giving up or letting go. You are giving up if you don't have a higher power. We all need a higher power. We all have a higher power. Whether you choose to see it or not, there is always a supportive, invisible force waiting for you to lean on it. You're letting go when you rely on your higher power. You're giving up when you think you can control everything and you lose control. I'm not here to convince you to rely on a higher power, but I'll tell you, life is better when you do. And when you let go of certainty and control, that's when healing and miracles happen. And they happen every day. This is Kate Foley. Thank you for listening.